spell it.
Hey
Yow.
everybody, you're here with the critics, and we are talking Black Myth WuKong full panel review episode. And I just want to say Yao Guai to everyone out there, ladies and gentlemen, and gamers of all mythological persuasions. Welcome to the Critics, the show where we don't just review games, we rip them up and stitch them back together like a Monkey King forging for his destiny. Today, we're diving into a game that's got more mystique than your favorite fantasy novel, more combat than a brawl in the heavens, and landscapes so beautiful you might forget you're dodging demons. That's right, we're reviewing Black Myth WuKong, the game that made all of us here feel a little bit more bananas. All right. And to help me navigate this epic journey, I've got absolute legends in the gaming world here for this review. First of all, I've got a man who causes the ruckus by just entering the room, a true myth in his own right, Mr. David Wilson, aka the Master of Mayhem. Wilson, how are you doing today?
What's up, bro? I'm well. I'm very well. I've just finished the game. What was it, yesterday? Today? A new cycle today. So I've only just managed to do it in time. But yeah, I'm well, and I'm excited to talk about a little bit of Black Myth.
Awesome. Happy to hear, and thanks for joining. And to help me navigate this epic journey, we've got to talk about the chaos. And there's only one man who can claim the title, the maker of chaos himself. Seriously, if a boss fight were a person, this guy would be it. Chaos. What are you up to? How are you doing? And thanks for joining us.
I'm doing good. Had a really enjoyed this game, and we're going to talk about it. And look forward to the conversation.
Yes, you may remember the maker of chaos from previous reviews if you've been on the panel. And we have a first time introduction into the League of the Critics. But he's not, he's hailing from parts unknown, bringing the raw power of gemstones and raw intellect to match. It's Gem Bear himself. You ready to drop some wisdom on us, Gem?
Yep, the wisdom I bring to you is go buy this game already. Just go buy it.
All right, and I'm your humble host, Rudigs, ready to guide us through this breathtaking, epic journey. And of course, throw in a few jokes along the way, and I've got the hair. So now, before we get into the nitty gritty, let's break the ice. David, Maker, Gem, what platform did you play Black Myth WuKong, and why? I want to start with David, then we'll make our way through Gem, and then on to Maker.
I am not a Sony player. I'm not a pony. I have not been into Astrobot like everyone else recently. I play on PC and Xbox, and my PC has no chance chance in hell of playing Black Myth. So I played it through GFN. I forked out for both Black Myth and for a few months of GFN in advance for the game, just to be able to play this specifically. And it was worth it. Oh, it was so worth it. Being able to play it at 4K with all the beautiful ray trace, and I did have to fiddle on with settings a little bit to get it right, but oh yeah, it was amazing on GFN, truly amazing. But GFN Ultimate, that was, because the game is it's pretty hefty on your system.
Yeah, and what Wilson's talking about is NVIDIA GeForce Now. It is NVIDIA's cloud-based system. The ultimate tier allows you to take advantage of a 4080 in the clouds. Just make sure you've got the internet to handle it. But it does allow great fidelity, but it's not all rainbows, as you did have some hiccups. But along the way, you did get to finish a great experience on great graphics on just the browser. But that's my GFN bit for that. Mr. Gem, what platform did you play the game on?
Played on the best platform, of course. PC. To be fair, I don't have a console anyway, so PC was my only option. But even though PC is great and all, I did have an issue where I went for the grey market version of Black Myth Wukong because to save like 10 or 15 pounds, and I got my key a whole day after because I had issues with the supplier and stuff, which I normally don't have. So, but in this case, it happened, and it was just it was on a bank holiday, so I was like, I really wanted to play the game, so I ended up paying for the game twice and then dealing with the first one at like as a refund like a few days later because I really wanted to play.
Yeah, I feel that I had a similar, not the same, but similar mix up.
Oh,
Maker,
Rue, can you say what happened to you? Because it was hilarious. It was hilarious. You
not
kind of got
hilarious,
screwed a little.
but Maker, what was your platform? How did you play the game?
Well, as you know, I mainly play on PC, so I did get it on PC, but I do have a PlayStation 5 as well. We'll see if I pick it up on there, but yeah, I have to say on PC it is definitely a visual spectacle. So I recommend playing it on PC.
And there you go. I myself picked it up on PlayStation. And that was because I had an issue. I was gifted the game. However, I was gifted it through a contest I won via different countries. So when they tried to give me the code, my entire Steam account got locked out the very morning I wanted to play Black Myth Wukong. So
Oh.
in a desperate panic, I returned the gift and I emailed Steam. They were very fast, the same day response, unlocked my account and said, sorry, we just flagged because it was a different country. But in the end, I just picked it up on PlayStation. I ended up missing my pre-order, which allowed you to have easy mode for the first little bit, which Wilson experienced. But, you know, I did it without it. So there's that. PlayStation, although it didn't have the same graphic fidelity, I feel did give me a good experience. Didn't crash or anything like that. But my graphics took a hit, that's for sure. All
Yeah, this
right,
game was
now that we've
rocks.
established our platforms, it's time to monkey around with some deep analysis. Let's dive right in. So, kicking off with scene and setting. I don't know about you guys, but this game made me feel like I've stepped into a mythical version of ancient China, where every corner hid a new surprise. Wilson, you've got an eye for detail. How did the settings work for you in terms of immersion? Did it pull you in, or were you just, I guess, not swinging around like Wukong, but navigating around like Wukong himself?
Oh, bro, I loved all the different settings. Starting with the forest, journeying into all these different biomes. I don't want to get into it too much, but obviously starting in a forest as a monkey. But there's so many different places that you go traveling on this journey through the West, as it is. And yeah, they do a great job with the set pieces. Great, creating this ancient world that definitely harkens to Eastern mythologies quite a lot. And I don't know how accurate of a way because I'm not educated in this stuff. I'm really not, but in a way that feels alive to me. Do you know what I mean? As a more amateur viewer of it. It's I thought the world building was great, absolutely great.
Awesome, awesome. And Gem, were there areas of the scene and setting that you felt were weaker or didn't live up to the rest of the world?
Um,
And remember, there's 100% spoilers. You can spoil anything you want. It's on the title. Just to let anyone know watching the show, this is 100% spoilers. We're going to talk about everything.
I was just about to ask you, are we allowed spoilers? Because I gotta talk about the last chapter. The first 5 chapters of the game was beautifully designed. You're always in a different biome with each chapter, but then the game just slaps you with chapter 6, where it's completely different. It's not a linear game anymore. It's a bit more open worldish, and you have a bit of backtracking and sidetracking and stuff with getting your armor and stuff. But to me, like it wasn't really that great. It wasn't really polished like chapter 6 level, but for me, it felt like maybe this is like a tech demo for maybe like when they're working on a sequel, or if they are going to work a sequel, maybe they're going to lean heavily onto the mechanics of Chapter 6. But yeah, it just caught me by surprise, like, because normally games have a structure and you just follow it, and then the developers are like, yeah, we're just going to slap you in the face with Chapter 6.
Yeah. There was definitely some of that sentiment shown across the Discord when we all hit chapter 6. Although, to be honest, as soon as I grabbed that Nimbus, I was just flying around for a straight 15 minutes, just buzzing through the air.
Yeah.
But Maker, you're all about the action. How did the level design in the different settings fit your chaotic nature? Did it give you enough to break battle and brawl? Was the level design there for you, or does Souls still hit it as sort of the pinnacle?
I would say From Software kind of nails it the best still. Um, it was good level design for the most part. Like Jim said, Chapter 6 very much felt a little directionless and not a very fleshed. It felt. Um, Another one I would probably bring up that I was not a huge fan of was Chapter 3, the Pagoda Realm. I did not I did not like um, they designed that particular section just because of like the jail cells and the little lantern guys that would it would change your viewing, and I hated that, especially since they didn't even have to be on like the same level to start activating. It was really weird.
However, I
Overall,
will I will say that a lot of the spots, it's even created Black Myth WuKong travel hotspots because people are going out and visiting. The settings that they were able to put this on, I think they did do a good job in creating these settings, especially for a first video game. So I will say that they had some pluses for them. In terms of interaction with the environment, I wish they had more interaction. I wish I was able to like bounce off walls like a monkey or even affect more breakable situations. But you got to give it up to them. They created distinct individual biomes. That snow area, they really transformed. They really made it feel like you were going through snow. So there's a lot of good positive things, but obviously some drawbacks. Um, I wanted to jump on to the next part of this review, which is the gameplay. And I mean, this is where it really gets interesting, right? Because the combat mechanics, traversal, the skill tree, it's everything that makes Wukong the legendary trickster we all want to be. So, Maker, let's start with you. How did the combat system fit with your need for, well, let's just say chaos? Because we all know that, you had a bit of a wall when you started because your combat style is go and smash them with a big heavy thing to do as much damage as possible. So you had to kind of evolve and transform and play into the Wukongness. So how did you like the combat, the gameplay?
I enjoyed it a lot. It reminded me a bit of like a kind of a God of War style where you have all these different special abilities that you can activate and kind of time them together to combo off of each other. And it's very action oriented, dodge heavy. There's no real like block until maybe like Rock Solid, which is like more of a parry system on a cooldown. But overall, I thought the combat was really well done, and quite a variety of different options where you can change it up as well. And I kind of wish that there were a little bit more or I call them talismans. The what are they called? Like the secret bosses would drop them as
Curios.
a use. No, not a curio. It would be
The Sorks.
like
The vessel.
it's where you activate it.
The vessels.
Vessel. That's it.
Yes.
I wish there were
yeah,
more
those
of
were
those.
fun.
because there's only like 4 or 5. But other than that there's enough options to kind of change or vary your build a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. Only having limited vessels, I wish there was more to it. And even if they were more impactful, I found the fan to be absolutely overpowering in the end. And why would I use another vessel? But Gem Bear, I know you're sorry about calling you Gem Bear. I know you're more methodical in your approach. How did you feel about the balance between combat and exploration? Do you?
Um,
Yeah.
so I actually prefer linear games anyways. And Black Myth Wukong has a really great linear style because it's a bit open-ended as well, similar to like Uncharted 4 where they were experimenting open levels is what they called it, where you have, you go from path A to B, but it's not just one direction. You can take two of the third direction. They'll give you multiple paths, and you can backtrack if you want. So they nailed that side. I have had bad level design issues where it wasn't obvious which path I could take. There were so many moments where I'm just hitting invisible walls, and I'm like, oh, I thought I could actually go here, but it turns out you can't. I also I forgot what I was gonna say. I also like the combat system. This is gonna be a hot take. Are we allowed spicy takes on this?
Of
Critic?
course, man. Speak
I'm
your
gonna give you a
mind.
spicy take. The combat, I prefer this over Elden Ring. The progression and the combat system combined, I prefer Black Myth Wukong over Elden Ring because, first of all, the combat is actually satisfying. Every single hit you do, the camera angle changes based on the momentum of your staff. And when you do your heavy attack combo, like let's say you do the level 3 or the 4 version, the camera like just pans along with the attack and then just hits. Like as soon as you hit the enemy, the camera just shakes and pans right towards the enemy. Like you feel every single hit, and it's quite rare for like it's been a long time since I played a game that was even like that, and it's so satisfying. The combat is just so satisfying. And another thing is, I can't stress this enough. This is one of the issues I had with Elden Ring. But in Black Myth Wukong, when you dodge, it actually dodges. Like the character actually dodges the attack. Like what an amazing feature, right? You press dodge and it dodges the attack. You don't get that shit with Elden Ring. In Elden Ring, it's luck based. But Black Myth Wukong, dodge. You hit dodge, you can rely on it. It's your defensive ability. Every like combat progression, level design is just brilliant.
Well, that is spicy, but in a positive way. I definitely see where you're coming from in terms of dodging, because in Elden Ring you're relying on iframes, which is invisibility frames during a roll. It doesn't necessarily make intuitive sense why you would be dodging a wave of thunder simply by rolling through it. But in Wukong, I mean, you're a monkey dodging attacks, so it is intuitive. You feel the dodge, and every time you hit a perfect dodge, you get a hit of dopamine because the like you said, the camera, the SFX, the everything happening around you makes you feel so good when it happens. But Wilson, I wanted to ask you about gameplay difficulty because we know that you're a savant when it comes to Souls-esque abilities, completing Sekiro with the Demon Bell on. So kudos to you, good sir. I
Thank you, thank
wanted to
you.
ask, do you think that it found the right balance between challenging and frustrating?
Uh, yeah, no, 100%. I'll give it that. Yeah. There was certain points. For the first two acts of the game, I didn't think it had that balance, and I think you, me, and Maker talked about this a bit when we were all first playing. We were like, there's a load of bosses. It's great, but are they all watered down? No, they're not. Act one and two, kind of go soft on you. If you're a more advanced Souls player, or if you've played a few Souls games, then Act one and two, it's just boss after boss, and they're relatively easy to get the timings down, most of them. I say that, but we also have a bit of history with that Wandering White, don't we? That silly baby. But no, I do think they get the balance down great. As soon as you start to get to the end of Act 2, moving into the later Acts 3, 4, 5, and 6, some of the main game bosses, the ones along the main story, do really become a challenge. They do really become doorways that you've got to bang your head against for a few hours at a time. And then the optional bosses, all the secret areas, I think almost every single one of the optional ones, they present a good challenge, and that's what you want, right? That's what we play these games for, is for the challenge, is for the grind, and not the grind of killing 1,000 enemies and feeling like a god, but feeling like David versus Goliath and actually killing Goliath. That is the rush that we play these games for, and it does give you that feeling. It does a great job on that feeling. I just want to bring up one or two other things about the gameplay, though, if that's okay.
Yeah, feel free
Yeah.
to.
The combat system, loved the combat system. Same, I almost mirror everything that Jem said, but I have one hitch with it. Not the same hitch that I had with Liza P. Mind, with the clipping on walls. This does not have that at all. The hitch is actually almost a compliment. That Wukong style, we've talked about this as well amongst us, haven't we? The Wukong style you get right at the end of the game, the coolest fighting stance that there is locked to just the end game. And then if you've played the game, okay, so if you don't know this, you can unlock that fighting ability, but correct me if I'm wrong, Rue, it's once you've played the game 3 whole times over. And at that point, like, you're not going to care about the fighting ability for all the other chapters, right? But I wanted it for my new cycle. I really did. That fighting ability was awesome. Invisible walls is something else I wanted to bring up as a little critique. I hated the invisible walls. The pathing was mostly obvious through the game, but the invisible walls, they would frustrate me something else. Because sometimes I would say, "Oh, that's an obvious jump. Let me jump off there, see what's down there," and you're just jumping into nothing. You know what I mean? Um, and last thing I want to bring up on gameplay. Last thing, I know I've talked forever. You made a joke that you need to set up a timer for me, and bro, you really do. Do you know one thing I loved? One thing I loved about the gameplay with the bosses was the dynamic. This is what I've chose to call it. I don't know what they choose to call it in the developers, but the dynamic counters slash dialogues that the bosses give you, whether it's stealing your drink or you equip a certain transformation and that boss knows the person you transformed into and they've got a specific thing they say to you about it. I loved the dynamicness of it. It really just it adds an extra level of immersion, you know. And almost every main boss had something like that, where if you used a special ability or if you used a specific stance, they had a dynamic counter specific to that, and I loved that. It was just a unique touch that this game had.
Yeah,
All
I
right, I'm
would
done.
absolutely agree. And another thing I would say is the skill tree presents a lot of freedom for us to play all very different, because I would say
Yes.
constantly through the times we were playing that I bet you all of our skill trees are different. So I want to go
Hmm.
through each of us and say, and Wilson, I'm looking at you when I say this. I'm going to go to you last so you have time to think about this. You have to say your favorite stance out of the 3 stances that were given to you.
Oh, the 3.
Yeah, you can't just say Wukong because obviously that was a combination of
The
them all.
best.
So,
It was the best stance. The
Maker, I
best.
wanted you to go over your favorite stance and why a little bit there. Did it make gameplay great for you?
Um, like like you said, I do like to play characters that hit hard. So to me, Smash Stance was the stance that I really enjoyed. I mean, I think the other two were cooler looking, but I just like the damage that Smash Stance pulls out.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, I'm in the exact same camp as you. I use thrust stance for a little bit, but I always went back to smash stance because I just love the damage I'd be able to pull off and the versatility of charging and sprinting. But those were definitely what made it a lot of fun for me. Jem, what was your go-to stance, and why did it make it fun for you?
So like you said, everyone had a different play style based on the skill tree and stuff. So for me, I didn't rely on the stances that much. I kept it on the left one because it was the only one where you can move and heavy attack. Personally, I found the middle one, the
Pillar.
middle one,
The pillar.
uh, yeah, to be the coolest looking one, but like the middle and the right one, you can't move with it, so I relied on the left one the most. But like I said, I didn't actually use the stance that much. What I did a lot of was just the combo heavy attack. I would just let it charge up and also use counter sometimes. I wouldn't just use the heavy attack. So yeah, with the stances, I just didn't use it that often.
I'm curious, did everybody play on controller or did anyone use a mouse and keyboard?
I use
Oh,
controller.
Controller, okay, controller
Controller
around the
here.
board. Wilson, what was your stance of choice? And pick one. Don't be like, oh, I like this one and
this
then
isn't
that
a
one.
straight answer. This isn't a straight answer because they all had different use cases, right? You judged me because I was streaming my game into Discord a couple of times, and you did say that we had wildly different skill trees. Because from the get go, like very early on, I'd leveled up all my stances, so I had access to all three, and I almost always had access to all three until I got to the end game and I started to fine tune for specific fights a lot more. I love them all. I used them all for different things. The smash dance allowed me to do quick executions on single targets because you could charge it up as you're walking around. The pillar stance gives you a breather. All right, it allows you a breather because you can stand up on that pillar and you can heal on top of the pillar. And it actually does more damage than Smash does if you wear the Yaksha armor set. It does a lot of damage with the Yaksha armor set. And then thrust also allows you to dodge out, and if you time it at the right time, it gives you invisibility, which again, it's another way to catch a breather. But it also gives you that range against bosses, which interrupts a lot of their charge attacks. So there's no one. There's no one. I don't know. The different use cases for all of them. Different use cases for all of them. I'm sorry.
Great answer for
Excuses.
non-answer there. Lastly, on gameplay, I wanted to get everyone's feelings on the transformations. I wanted to. Obviously, it was a unique part of the game. You could sometimes. There was two different transformations, right? One is your spirit, which either did an attack of some sorts or gave you a buff. I want to talk about your right side magic that allowed you to transform it into a different character, spec into a different attack set. One, how did you feel like that changed the game for you? And two, what was your go-to and ended up being your favorite? And we'll start in the middle with a gem.
So, for most of the gameplay, I went with the Crash Bandicoot spin guy. I don't know anyone's name. I just saw that guy was spinning with an axe. I was like, yep, that's gonna be my ultimate ability. So usually when I just head into battle like with a group of enemies, I just spam L2 R2, get that character up there. I just start spinning, and he spins for a long time and does decent damage. But later on, I played around with the archer, just to have long range, because I needed that more often. But I
Are you
would,
talking about the spirits?
yeah.
So
Is
are we
that not?
including the spirits as well as the transformations?
Yeah,
Because I thought
yeah,
you were
you
talking
can
about the
break. Yeah, you can
transformations.
break into it. I did mention the spirits.
Okay.
What's the transformations?
The transformations are when you got an extra bar of health and you had a might meter with
Oh,
your stamina and things like the horse guy or um
yeah. I just used the starter fire dude.
the
He
wolf.
was still one of the best. Oh, he was
Yeah,
awesome.
for most of it. Yeah, I didn't like the other ones because the other ones had like, I don't know. There was one with the big cleaver where he attacks way too slow. And I just kept getting stunned, so I just relied on the fire guy throughout most of the gameplay.
In fairness, though, you can probably give us a different perspective on the spirits, because Miru and Maker basically used Babyhead the entire game, right? Like we didn't vary with the spirits at all. So what was?
Yeah.
Sorry, Brew, to ask the question here, but what was the spirits that you liked, Gem? Because I'm curious
Uh,
to know.
yeah, I played around with a lot of the spirits. I used the Venom one right at the beginning because it's the one of the first ones you unlock. And I used that for as a decoy and also damage deal over time. It was guaranteed. So it was useful for AoE stuff, or if you needed to escape real quick. But once I unlocked the Spin Crash Bandicoot Spirit, I used that on most gameplay. But eventually, like I said, I needed range attacks, so I experimented with all the range spirits I had, and I landed on one of them that does like this sniper bow thing that deals really high damage. Then later on, I upgraded that one with like critical attack and stuff, and I just started doing way more damage with it as well. And I used it a lot during boss battles, so for long range.
Oh, that's what you get for exploring on the 30 odd spirits you get, and me just sticking to Baby Smash.
Yeah. I always wanted to use them more, but it was just, I don't know, one more aspect to the game. There were so many different ways to experiment with combat, right?
That's
Yeah,
for sure. Go
I wanted
Maker.
to say I did try a different one. There's like a kind of like a rock kind of like baby monster looking thing on chapter 5 that I used for its crit chance, and it did like a roar that would do AoE damage, and I swapped to that eventually so I could go for my crit build later on. um, and that one worked. It worked okay. Baby was stronger.
Yeah, there was a Taoist one where he would like stick something in the ground and there would be red like glow and that would increase your damage. And I tried that, but I was way too mobile to take advantage of it. So I just ended up going with Baby Smash. But yes, Wilson. Oh no, Maker. You got to tell us your favorite transformation that you ended up with.
My favorite transformation is probably the fire wolf, because it's just you don't have to worry about like parrying anything. You just start hitting, and then you just once you build your meter with the light attack, dodge, heavy attack, and then it would do a special that would ignite and do a bunch of fire buff and also do a ton of damage. Um, Other than that, when I did fight like a fire enemy, I would swap it out to the tentacle, something of the sea
Hoarfrost.
creature.
It was called
Yeah,
Hoarfrost. Yeah.
yeah.
Good
And it
memory,
was
Wilson.
and that was and that one was pretty good, because once you built up the meter, you put like a layer of snow, and then you just grab rocks from the snow and sling it at the enemy. It was pretty good, but just not as good as the fire guy.
Yeah, I was on rotation. I would always pick different ones. I remember I used Horsesquai for a bit because I liked his circle of electricity. If I could get an enemy trapped in there, it would kind of continually stun them and hit them with electricity. But then as soon as I unlocked Stone Monkey, I thought that this was the pinnacle of transformations. The mobility, the additional magic you had, and just being this huge stone monkey was just uber cool for me. But for the longest time, I just stuck with the wolf because I felt like the dodge and smash got me a lot of damage and a scorch buildup, as well as the Lin Tiger. I felt like good defense, big, huge damage, but very slow and not very mobile. But those are the ones I really gravitated towards. I know Wilson, you jumped into the yellow long was the
Yeah,
last
you
one I
know my
saw you.
answer. I like
Yeah.
them all, like you said. I experimented. I really like the macaque, and I was gonna say honorable mention to the stone monkey because that one was just probably the coolest, right? But my favorite was the yellow long, was the fallen long, whatever he was called. He was so cool, man. I love as you said, the fire stack with the fire wolf. He had the electricity stack instead. with the yellow long. And the thing that was his like specialty, because they all had different ways you could use them, right? The specialty of the yellow long was it had the inbuilt seeing through the counter attack that you could do. Where if you did a heavy right before or in the middle of a light combo, if you did a heavy right before the enemy's about to attack you, it would parry and it would build your focus meter. And if you landed 3 of those with the yellow long, which usually was pretty easy, but it was a bit of a roll of the dice sometimes. The damage you could do with that thing was insane. And then as soon as you ended transformation, it still had a full stack of electricity, which meant you back as Wukong could do a bunch of extra damage because electricity debuff basically means every attack while they've got electricity does double damage, I think, or something like that. But yeah, no, I love the yellow long one. But yeah, honorable mention to the stone monkey. That was the coolest. And the macaque. I love the macaque.
We all know that you love my cock.
Stream just went 18.
Yes. Let's get into the story. It's a big one, full of myth, full of mystery, and let's face it, some truly wild twists that weren't always connected. Wilson, I know you love a good narrative. You know, I want to say something. When I played games before I met Wilson, I always thought like the logs and the images and the extra lore, those parts of video games were not for anyone. Like, who in their right mind would spend time reading and looking through that stuff when gameplay is right in front of you? But then I met Wilson, and he literally does that thing where you open them and read them and understand what the text and the stuff is saying. So, you're the best one to jump into the story questions here. Was it where do I start? Was it a slow burn? I know you love a good narrative, so how did it grab you? Was it interesting, coming from Chinese culture and sort of translating it to English? Did you think that the story worked overall, or have you heard better ones? I know there's a lot of questions coming at you, so I'm just gonna ask for your general review of the story.
So little bit of background that I know. My basis of Wukong knowledge comes from League of Legends, bro, because he's been popularized by a few different things here and there. I think firstly in the West it was a movie called Monkey or Return to Monkey, and that was the first ever version of Journey to the West. Journey to the West is where it originates from, which is a Chinese novel, and I might get this wrong, but I think from the 16th century. And it's just it's a novel. It's not like ancient mythology or anything like that. It's a big long book. But it was about it was based on I think a monk's pilgrimage from China to India to acquire Buddhist texts to learn about the Buddhist religion. That's like the basis of what it's about. And does that translate to any of you guys? It didn't translate to me a lot. But at the same time, that doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, it does also reflect Buddhism in the way that it's about reincarnation, right? I mean, anyone who's finished the game sees that. You see that it is about this monkey with several lives who comes back over and over. Um, who has made an impression on all of these people who you get to meet for the first time, and they already know you when you're doing that game. And as you read the backstories, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I did read a lot of them. I didn't read them all, but they were wildly confusing. But the ones I could piece together, they were so cool. Chinese mythology is so different from our own. And I do recommend, if you can be bothered, read a handful of them. Maybe not randomly throughout the game. I would recommend reading a chunk of them one next to each other. The ads that you meet next to each other, because they usually form a full story. One of my favorites, actually, this is my recommendation. If you beat the game, read the story of all of the frogs that you kill. All right, the story of all of the frogs is a really interesting one. It's a wandering Taoist. And I love how they give you these stories that link together across multiple enemies, and it still links to that individual enemy. But yeah, I mean, story wise, they did such a good job. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still probably just as confused as all of you guys were, because it was very confusing. I try to find more information about Journey to the West, and it's really hard to get full interpretations of it over in English. But I loved what we got to see story wise. It makes me want to learn more. I'm truly fascinated by this character now. I'm fascinated by him and all the gods around him, and by the DLC that's around the corner. And by that I just mean that's confirmed. Yeah. But that's what I've got to say about the story and the lore. There is a lot to say about it, and it was confusing, but it was awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you for that analysis of the story. I do appreciate your review and the attention to detail you have.
Yes, sir.
Definitely a nice tip. Follow the frog story if you're looking for one piece of lore that connects.
Yeah.
Maker, I wanted to ask you, were there any points in the story that felt disjointed or unclear? Because I know I felt that throughout the story where it didn't really feel like some of the story was connected as I've seen in other games, but I'll let you speak on that point if you felt similar.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there were definitely some parts where it didn't really make a lot of sense as to like why they were there, or like for example, at the end of chapter 2, there was a cutscene with, or like a like a claymation with the fox. I didn't understand why that was shown as a part of like the main story cutscene, and it was like a side quest in chapter 3. Um,
I like
I
that.
don't know. Yeah, I usually like that if it's hinting at something that shows up later. But this was like a straight on like 5-6 minute cutscene for something that is easily missable in chapter 3.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because like literally, if you don't interact with the body there and find the correct like monk to do the quest line, you're not gonna get the conclusion to that story. Um,
That is true, but it is
uh,
on the main path. It is on the main path. But it is
it is
easily
on the main
missable, I'll
path.
give you that.
Yeah, yeah. I the also the end of chapter 5. I really feel like we should have had that context before we did chapter 5 and met the bull. Um, because knowing like that's one thing I feel like this game does not do well at all. I don't understand, like we don't really understand the relationships between some of these characters, and having that backstory I feel would be very important, and probably more make the game more emotional, because these characters would, you would be well known, right? Like you would know, like this was your friend. You went through trials and tribulations with them, so it just didn't make sense to me why you would that after you know the end of chapter 5.
Yeah, I get that. And a lot of it, like for instance, at the end of one chapter, you would end up all of a sudden in the next chapter exploding out of a statue. And then I would scratch my head saying, how did I get from point A to point B? I wish that animation in between the two chapters really explained that journey. I feel like that may be a disconnect at how they felt that they wanted to tell their story, or perhaps how Journey to the West is even told, right? It may be told in these different chapters, in these different story segments. But I
Can
think
I
that
comment
part
on
was a
that?
little bit lost. I want to get to Jem before I get
Of course.
your comment, but I do appreciate your insights. I want to talk about the progression of Wukong throughout the story, Jem, and if you want to chat about any aspect other than that for the story, feel free to. But were there moments that left you scratching your head, or did you feel like they did a good job at developing Wukong as a character from beginning to end?
You might as well just go to Wilson because I honestly give zero shits about the entire story of the game.
No,
The
then
only
you were
thing
like me. You were like I don't look at the logs or anything like that,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. The only things I
Yeah.
liked was the fighting scenes with the camera angles and stuff. That was top notch. And I also liked all the animations when you finish a chapter. And that's it. I don't care about the lore. I don't care about the characters. I don't care about the story.
So I'll
So
ask
yeah.
you this then. How did you feel about their art direction to choose a different animation style for each chapter?
It was unexpected and awesome. It was great. Like I just didn't expect it, and I'm glad they did it. Because it made me want to finish the chapter more. Because I was wondering what type of animation style are they gonna do next, and what is the story? Because the story of the chapter bonuses were interesting. They were like 5 minute shorts that actually were interesting to me. They always starts with one way, and then there's a twist, and then it's about humanity, like I don't know, like humanity's greed or love or whatever. It's just feelings. I like that. That's about it.
Oh yes. I wanted to actually ask what everyone's favorite. It was kind of like a logic, a lesson-based one. And Wilson, you can get into your explanation if you wanna, if you still have it in your head. But my favorite chapter story was definitely the one where the sea creature was saved by humans, and every time he would scratch, there would be pearls, and then humanity got out of control wanting these riches and ended up tearing him apart and killing him, and all for greed. And in the end, it was the god who tempted humanity into this, all to win a bet. And I just thought, wow, what a brain scratcher. So well done on those aspects of storytelling. I think they hit it out of the park, and like Jem said, they made cinematic vignettes extremely reward based. You would be excited to get the clip and see what they had in store for you at the end. And I think that's the right way to do cinematic vignettes, and I won't say anything more about that. Maker, your favorite short story in between chapters?
I would probably have to say I like the Fox one, honestly, but I'm a little sucker for claymation type stuff. So yeah, I do think like the one you picked as well was really good. I like the concept behind it. Um, but yeah, that's mine.
Wilson, your
I
favorite short.
don't remember them all. I only remember the ones that you've mentioned. As you've mentioned them, I remember them. But what else was there? Was the
The
black bear one?
blanket. Yeah, the
Yeah,
blanket with the
the
black bear.
blanket, then the fox, then it was the one that you're talking about third, right?
Yeah.
Then what was the last three?
I thought
then
his was
then
the
you have
fourth one.
the love with the spider and the hog.
Oh no,
Oh
yeah, that was
my
Okay,
more
god.
harder.
How
okay,
could
that
you not
one.
Yeah.
cry?
Yeah, no, that one
Jesus.
had me in tears. That might have been my favorite. What was the other two after that?
Well, the sixth one didn't. The sixth one was that big epic kind of what happens after Wukong, right?
Oh,
They
that might
had
have
that
even been my favorite.
the adventures of Wukong sort of after
They
the
were
fact.
all. I can't remember them specifically enough because I've got a terrible memory. To say which one was my favorite, I would have spoke on the one that you did, the one where the guy had his guts his guts poured out in the end, the golden guts, and it was a lesson on greed. I loved that one. But I'll just go back to quickly explain my take on what Maker was talking about before that you both of you said was a little bit confusing between each chapters. I just thought that that was down to our ignorance of the law. This game's massively popular in China, probably a lot more popular than what it's been over here in the West, and it is popular over here in the West. But the numbers it's received in China are massive. Wukong in China is a tale that everyone knows that's been passed down from their grandfathers and their grandfathers' grandfathers, and that you tell your kids growing up. You tell them the tales of Wukong as they're going to sleep at night. They're like comic books in a way, but like ancient Chinese epics, and people almost have them memorized. So I imagine for most people over in China, it's almost like they know the links. They know how he made it from chapter one to chapter two. Um, that's my guess. I could be completely wrong on that, but I think it's just it's to them they felt like it was an irrelevant gap to fill in when they could have gave us those cool little animations that you're wanting to talk about right now, and those extra bits of story which built even more lore, which built even more, I wouldn't say quite immersion, but just more interest and fascination in the world. That's what all these stories did, right? They made us fascinated. We didn't quite understand them. We talked about them ad nauseum, and still we're like, wait, what does this even mean? seen. But at the same time, it didn't mean that they weren't awesome in a way that we did talk about them at length, every single one of them, as we stumbled into them, because these in between cutscenes were brilliant. They were so well done. But it just goes to show how deep the lore is, right? It just goes to show how deep the lore of Journey to the West is.
Yeah,
I
and
I wanted to actually
yeah, go for it, Maker.
I wanted to disagree. I don't think that people would immediately understand what's happening between the chapters, because this isn't Sun Wukong, your reincarnated version of later on. Yeah, at the end you see the cutscenes of things that Sun Wukong does in his journey, but in particular in this one, I think it was just kind of just to fill the gap of how it gets from one location to the next.
You may be right, but I don't think either of us know for sure if the journey that we're watching here is
Oh
referencing
no.
as much of Sun Wukong. I don't know how much of this is actually in Journey to the West. I know that obviously Sun Wukong is, and the rough idea of him going to the West is, but what we're doing here, collecting the pieces of what used to be Wukong, I don't know how much of that is actually part of Journey to the West. I really don't. Um,
Right,
but
because there's
yeah.
no
That's just my thought.
journey to the actual west that occurs
Well, no, you are
in the
going
game.
westward from Mount Huaguao or Huagu or the mountain. You are going westward from the mountain.
Okay.
But it's not the same journey. Like,
But
for
I
example,
don't
like
I don't
at the
know
end
if it is
cutscene
or not. I don't. Do you know
shows
that
the
it
battle
is?
with the snake. I'm pretty sure the battle with the snake is one of the main stories in Journey to the West, but I don't see, like, the only my only history in Journey to the West is I played Enslaved. Is
Oh,
also
I love
based off
that
Well,
of
I've heard
game.
Journey
that
to the
Rue
West.
might understand it best because it's a direct reference to what would you say? Dragon Ball
Dragon
Z.
Ball Z. Yeah. We
Yeah, what
won't
did
get
Goku
into
do? What
let's
did
let's
Goku
not get
do?
into our guesses of what Journey to the West is then from a
Yeah.
bunch of white
Can
guys on the panel here.
Yeah, yeah.
can I just say something?
Yeah, go for it, Jim.
I haven't seen Dragon Ball Z, but when I was talking about Black Myth Wukong and the orbs and the abilities and stuff to my friend, he's like, "Oh, that just sounds like Dragon Ball Z." So I don't know what
Yeah.
the relevance is, but I thought that was interesting. You guys brought it up as well.
Well, apparently the stories are very similar. I mean, Goku is an ape-like creature who collects orbs to make a wish. It's a similar story, supposedly, but we won't get into too much of that. I wanted to ask a question that relates to story before we get to meat and oh my gosh, the timer. Your favorite NPC in the game? Who stands out the most? And we'll give Wilson time to think about it. So we'll start with Maker and then go on around. Who is your favorite NPC in the game you came across?
Hmm. Are we talking like quest line or
A character you interacted with, right? I mean, you
would
have the
say
bull in chapter 5, you have the hoof guy, you have horse guy. There's also the back
tiger,
scratcher in the first chapter.
fox girl, the red boy, the um I mean, I feel like the pig is, what is his name, like I can't remember his full name.
Jubaji? Was
Um
it Jubaji?
yeah, Juba. It's like Juba. Yeah. But I have to go with the fox. I just really like the fox's story and how they're getting vengeance.
Yeah, it's a cool little story. That's for sure. Jem, who's your favorite NPC along the journey to the west?
Shout out to the Fox Girl, but it wasn't enough
The
to capture my
fox
heart.
girl in chapter
Fox.
not right in chapter 5?
Mm,
In
Yeah.
chapter 5. But no, it has to be. There's only one character that I you really bond with. It's the hog guy, the little hog
Jubaji.
guy. Yeah,
My
it,
hoof.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to protect you, he cares about you. He seems like the only character that does that. Everyone else tries to backstab you. But yeah, he's the only one that I pretty much like.
Yeah, and they design it around that way for sure. Except for, the appeal of some of the other Yao Guais. But
Yo, why?
Wilson, your
I was
favorite NPC.
I was probably gonna say Jubaji. As Jem says, he's probably the only one who is as consistently throughout the story that gives you a chance to get really tied to him, get a little bit invested in him. I think even chapter 4 is somewhat devoted to understanding him a little bit further. What with his relationship with the spider. Um, I don't know Wukong's story at all. I've done a little bit of reading since playing the game, and from my understanding, he's meant to have 6 companions throughout his journey, and Jubaji was one of the 6. And I think they've just, as a creative choice, they've chose to only have him around, to have somewhat of a companion, have someone guiding you, almost like the Melina, you know what I mean, that you've got in Elden Ring. Just someone to be you know what I mean, that your guide.
Your Navi.
But yeah, your Navi, exactly. But I do really enjoy the camp setup that you can get, which you can miss it, and it's easy to miss. But if you get the camp setup, the dragon at camp, I like some of his comments when you go to talk to him. I like how he nurtures the seeds. I like his little backstory, man. I really do. And also the Yellow Long's backstory that's a different one, different dragon. Yeah, different dragon. The Yellow Long's backstory though, how he hid on the healer's, the guy with the god. He hid on his robe the entire time for millennia because he wanted to avoid his destiny. But eventually he embraced his destiny, and his destiny, I don't know if it was to be slain by Wukong. I think it was. But it was to be part of the Destined One's journey. And there's comments that other bosses will make about it, how he eventually embraced his destiny. Hats off to him. But if you read his backstory, it's yeah, I loved. You can get a tie to almost every of the bosses that you kill. If you read their backstories, and you can feel sorry for them, but you can also be really intrigued by how they were put there and how they were originally friends with Wukong, or how there was a different story with them originally. Like with the Black Bear Guy, they've got a really interesting story if you read the backstories as well. But yeah, I would probably say the Yellow Long. The Yellow Long's avoiding his destiny until he eventually jumped off the drunkard's robe and consigned himself to it.
Well, thanks for that comment. And anybody who does make it this far and wants to comment, yes, I will recognize that Yellow Long is not necessarily an NPC because you can transform into him, but that's fine. We're gonna let it slide. Let's get
I mean,
into
horse guy is also like someone you can transform into, but he's also an
Yeah.
NPC.
yeah.
And he's an NPC first before he's a transformation. That's how all the transformations work.
There we go. Rudix was wrong. But let's get on to boss battles. All right, we've now reached the real meat and potatoes of the game. I think this game did a great job in, sort of setting a tone for a different kind of genre, a boss rush sort of game, if you may. And I think there's one thing that this game loves, it's throwing some absolutely wild boss fights at you. I think there's even over 80. Maker, I think it's safe to say that this is your territory. Did the bosses live up to your standards?
I thought they did a pretty good job. I kind of wish that it really felt like it scaled up in difficulty towards the end instead of like. I feel like I spent the most time towards the beginning of the game than I did towards the end on bosses. Like when I think back to my like Souls games, I think of those end game bosses, even if they might be optional, felt so satisfying to defeat them finally after a bunch of attempts. And with these, I I think maybe like the boss just before this like secret ending was a little bit more challenging, but yeah, I kind of wish the final boss was a bit more of a challenge. In some of the chapter 6 bosses more challenging. Uh, but other than that, like in terms of like animations, like I think they did a great job with those. Absolutely love some of these animations for these boss fights. I love the secret ending, like almost Asura's Wrath style, where you grow massive for that boss, those two boss fights. Um, I guess the only thing I'd complain about, like for like a boss rush game, I kind of wish there was less exploration in Chapter 3 and Chapter 4, and just more focused heavily on boss instead of these winding paths and parts where I'd kind of get lost at.
Yes, 100% agree with a lot of your statements there. Jim, how did you feel about the boss elements? Did you feel like it was a meaningful challenge that fit into the larger story, or was it just difficult, or was it, a breeze in the park, a walkthrough? I mean, I remember talking to you when you first got the game, and you were halfway through the game in a couple hours, so. How did you feel about the boss battle, the main piece of the gameplay element for this title?
So this game has a lot of bosses. Like, oh my god, it's bosses everywhere. You turn around the corner, there's a boss. You go to the grocery store, there's a boss. Like everywhere's a boss. Um, and I think they should have added more minions, way more minions, because like I said, the combat's fun, but fighting bosses aren't that fun, but the minions are. So the thing about bosses is that because you have so many bosses, I have no idea what the number is. It could easily be 50 or 100 bosses
81.
in the game. 81, yeah, I'm not surprised.
I'm seeing two guides right now, one saying 107 and one saying 113. So who
Oh,
knows?
wow. Yeah, I saw a guy
Okay,
say 81.
you got 100 bosses,
Yeah.
and the
Maybe
thing
81
is,
unique, I could
I
see.
see another. I see your guide that says 81. I see another that says over 90. Who knows? There's about 100, something like that.
Okay, there
Something
we
yeah,
go.
like that.
so you got a game with 100 bosses, and when you compare to other games where you have a boss, bosses are supposed to be really unique, and they're supposed to offer a unique puzzle and strategy that you need to overcome with. Black Myth Wukong doesn't do that. It's just you feel like you're just facing a mini boss with large health pool and large high damage. That's what the whole game just felt like. I didn't like it was so rare for me to feel like, oh, this actually feels like a proper boss battle. To me, majority of them just felt like mini bosses, but with higher health. Um, I appreciate bosses in games when they just give you something unique, a unique challenge. What I really appreciate even further is when the game is teaching you new abilities like throughout a level, and then at the end of the level you need to use majority of what you've just learned and a hint of what you've already learned before to beat the next boss and stuff. But yeah, this game doesn't do any of that. They do it sometimes, but it's rare. Like for example, the one with the winds. When you unlock the wind ability, you should use that on your next boss, because it's a counter to it. The yin yang fish boss battle, that actually felt like a boss battle because it was a unique mechanic, and also it was cool. It visually looked awesome. It actually felt like a proper boss battle. But I can't say the same for the rest. The rest just feel like bullet sponge thing. Mini bosses that were spongy basically.
Yeah, I completely understand that. And when you talk about that concept, I think that bosses like the Mass Judge in Lies of P stick out to me because it was a boss that, forced you to parry as a mechanic and it forced you to be good at parrying because it was literally the only way to be able to beat this boss. And I felt like I was a better gamer after beating it because I had to implement a brand new technique. Kind of how like I felt like against the Fallen Long. I had to, get good at countering attacks to be able to counter so many of his attacks and just keep on with my onslaught. So I definitely think that it was a bit further and few between. And I get what you're saying, kind of like they just created ads and gave them bigger health pools, made them more aggressive. I would have liked to see more animation styles like we saw in the last boss. I thought that was incredibly interactive, and the boss arena was amazing. I thought it climaxed on bosses, to be honest, after chapter 5. I thought they just got better and better and better, but it took a while to get there. Wilson, I want to jump into your thoughts on bosses and how they compare to other games you played. I know that this game really well. One thing I want to say is there is a high I get from beating a challenging boss and then a big and epic, scary looking boss. And I think what this game did is it took that feeling and it put it all over the maps. And for
Yeah.
that, I will say it's very much a game built for me and the genre that I like. So I do give it mass appreciation for that. The bosses did have some challenges. That water one in the opening, I felt great after defeating it, and I think that kind
The
of high kept.
serpent.
Yes, it kept me
It's the
coming
first
back.
two phaser. It's the
Yeah,
first two phaser that you find is that serpent. Yeah, yeah. I remember that being a little bit of a challenge. That gave me a bit of a sore thumb.
the only thing I will say is I wish bosses had more bosses with the stamina bar and block mechanic, more bosses with 2 phases. I
Mhm.
think they should have amped up all the difficulties in all of the challenge areas, the secret areas, and kept more of the main stuff, more of walkthrough. I think that's the way they could have balanced accessibility. But I'll leave it to you, Wilson, to talk about the boss situations.
I agree with all of that. I agree with all of that. But what was the first thing that you said there? There was something I was going to say about it. What was the first comment that you made there about the bosses?
I can read one of these things here. Did the design of bosses feel original and fresh, or were there moments where you thought, "Oh, I've seen this before"?
Yeah, no, no, no. I was just meaning what you just said there a moment ago, but no, no. On bosses,
Yeah,
um, so we were talking about how many there are. Jem saying he would have preferred more ads. I get why he says that compared to most of the Souls games, and I was also going to say something on something else you said before. Um, the bosses they double down. We talked about this already. They double down on that boss factor of Souls games, right? This is not a Souls game. If you're very strict about what is a Souls game, what is a Souls like, this isn't that, all right? But they've took aspects of that formula, such as the grand bosses, the David versus Goliath factor, these cinematics as you enter the arena and as you kill them and as you second phase them and they transform into something even grander and scarier. They took that aspect and they really doubled down. So if that's one of your favorite points from the Souls genre, from the From Software formula, then this game is definitely going to be for you.
well said.
But the bosses, there's about as many ads as there are bosses. I remember from memory, I couldn't tell you exactly, but like per each chapter, you would see like 30 ads, 30 enemy, because you could see it in the journal, right? There was like 30 enemy types and then 40 bosses, or 40 bosses and then 30 enemy types. It would always be around the same number. Do you know what I mean? So there was a lot. It was very dense. So if that's not your thing, that's or if that amount of head banging against the wall, because that's what these bosses do to you, is too much, or it becomes frustrating. I can understand. Do you remember what happened to me with the Fallen Long, which became my favorite transformation? How I was fighting it for days, and then I eventually, once I beat it, my internet cacked out on me. I lost my GFN save, and all of a sudden I hadn't beat it anymore. Oh, I was devastated. I was devastated. But yeah, no. The bosses, I think they did really, really well. I do agree with your critique though. This was going to be my main critique on them, is make the game accessible. All the optional stuff should be double as challenging, or up the ante with those, and keep the main path somewhat simple. except towards maybe the end. But yeah, keep the main paths somewhat simple. Although I think they did mostly do that. There weren't as many main bosses that were as challenging.
Well, gentlemen,
Um,
I could talk. Oh, you want to go, Maker?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly, since we're talking about bosses, I was a little frustrated with some of the bosses with their hitboxes, like the Pagoda Realm boss, the leg and having to hit the leg, or the Chapter 4 final boss with like the multiple like spider legs. It made it a little bit difficult to hit, or maybe like the dragon in the beginning of Chapter 3 was slightly floating above, so you kind of had to hit a little higher up. I had a little issue with those just because it's a little frustrating on some of those bosses to really get a solid hit on them because based on their like hitbox areas. Um,
There was one that just had a
and
buggy hitbox area for me where I was obviously hitting it and it just wasn't coded right, and then like 30% of my hits just would go through it, which was frustrating. But I
I've had
still
that
still did
as
it,
well.
obviously.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also wanted to I wanted to also agree with Jem that there were a lot of like bosses that felt like mini bosses. I kind of wish it made it so that you could discern what is a mini boss and what is like a boss,
You
and that way
could.
when you did get to that, not
In
me,
the
like all of
log,
them have the same
right?
health
In the
bar.
law, pay attention to your journal, and they
Hey, I
distinguish
get
because there
it.
was
Yeah, because
lesser Yao,
monkeys write in their journals, right, Wilson? That's
lesser.
Like
logical.
Well, actually, there's even law behind how there's law because it says someone documented Wukong's travels. It doesn't say that the monkey did. But in the law book, it breaks it down into 4 sets. You have lesser Yao Guai, Yao Guai chiefs, Yao Guai kings, and characters, and that's how you can distinguish between what might be a mini boss and a true boss. Is between the Yao Guai chiefs and the Yao Guai kings.
And a visual
so,
representation of that would have made it that much better for sure.
It would have, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, it breaks it down into 4 sets.
I think like for me when I'm playing Elden Ring, like a boss is if I'm progressing through like an area and I come across a boss, it feels like a boss. Whereas if I go into like a small little cave in this section, I know that that's probably going to be a mini boss. It's not going to be one of the big extravagant kind of bosses usually.
Yeah, and in
It,
Elden Ring, when you find a boss, you actually go through like a yellow foggy thing and you can't go back.
well, that's also for the small bosses too, but it there's usually a lot more grandiose feeling when you do go through those main areas than if you were to do the little dungeon. To me, the little dungeons remind me of like Breath of the Wild, and where you go through the small little like delves or small little um, dungeons. You know that it's just going to be like a small mini game or small thing, whereas you go through the main plot, you're going to run into a bigger boss or like a more grandiose thing.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, there has been a lot of talk about Black Wukong, and we could go on for days. That's for sure. But time is always a constraint, and I want to get these gentlemen to give me their ratings of the game. Feel free to give it any rating you see fit. You want to give it 6 bananas out of 10? You want to give it 97 out of 100? You want to give it 6 gem bears out of 7 gem bears? That's up to you. But I want to start with Wilson. Why don't you give us your rating of the game? Go for it.
Oh, solid 9.5 or 9. I would put it up there with the Metacritic rating that Astro got. I really enjoyed this. It's been a while since I got heavily into a title like this and was fascinated by it and just stuck with it. So yeah, I would give it a solid 9.5. I'm gonna say. And also, Callie asked earlier how many awards. I would say it's going to pick up a good handful when it comes to the nominations.
Well, that absolutely is for sure. And I think Maker made a good point And it's kind of relatable because some of the games I have the most fun with seem to win this category. Similar to Armor Core 6. I yelled it from the rooftops. I'm like, this is my game of the year. And then it won Action Game of the Year. And I really feel like that's the same path that Black Myth Wukong has.
I could
But
see that.
Jem, I want to get your rating on the game.
Well, starting off this review, I was gonna give it a 10 out of 10, but after Wilson kept telling us to read the fucking law, I had to drop the points to a 4.5.
Oh my god!
No, what I rate this is a 1.5 out of 1 Elden Ring.
Wow,
Because
wow.
Wow.
here's the thing, I love
Hot
Elden Ring.
take.
I love Elden Ring, but the only reason why I finished Elden Ring was just to finish it. Once I finished the game, I was like, finally, I'm done. I forced myself to finish Elden Ring towards, the second half, I would say. But with Black Myth Wukong, when I finished the game, I still wanted to do more. I wanted to 100% the game, but I already told you guys that, oh, that's a long journey that I didn't want to partake. But
Yeah.
I was
That's
I
too
was
far
up for it.
west.
Yeah, let's go back, go back. um, but yeah, I had that itch. I had the urge to do more, and I finished like chapter one. Like I went back and I did all chapter one. I did all chapter two. Then I went on Google and looked at what I need to do for 100%, and I was like, nope, uninstall. But if it wasn't for that, I would have still been playing Black Myth right now. Which I can't say the same with Elden Ring. Again, but to be fair, I do like Elden Ring. I just want to say that.
Absolutely. And Maker will get your rating.
I think it's a very good start for like. I mean, this is I think their first attempt into the AAA space, so I think they did a very good job. Um, but to me, I think there were definitely some things that they could improve on. Um, and for me, I'd probably give it like an 8.5 to a 9. Like if I could give it like an 8.7, around where I'd give it. Um, and I see it winning like maybe action of the year, and maybe some noms for like um, graphic design or art direction. I could see that. I just don't think it's going to win or get nominated for a lot of awards, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, being a newer studio, but it did get ridiculous attention, and I guess only time will tell. It didn't review particularly high. Like you're saying, maybe it should have got the same reviews as Astrobot, but it landed around the 81, 82 space. But for me, in my review, I am going to give this game a 10 out of 10 bananas. I really think that it's all about the monkey in this game. Yes, there was shortcomings. I mean, we didn't talk about the fact that it didn't have a map. I
Yeah.
thought that you could interact perhaps better with the environment. You could be more monkey-like in terms of, actually being able to climb. So there are certain aspects that it did have a downfall on. But what I
Nimbus
come
Cloud.
and the Nimbus Cloud. I feel like you should have, once you got the Nimbus Cloud, it shouldn't have been locked to Chapter 6. You should have had the ability to use that everywhere. It would have
I have
made
high
New
hopes
Game
for the
Plus
DLC.
so much better. So it would have been like, yeah, I'll come back to New Game Plus. I'll just whiz through it on my Nimbus and get what I need.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just not the flavor. But what I will do, and why I do give it such a high score, is because it's very rare for a game to get me to come back day in day out until I'm finished, because it's just such a great experience in fun and exciting combat. Sekiro is very much front of mind when I play this game, because you get the speed that you get with Sekiro. You get the mobility of the character and these epic boss battles with that high from bosses. So now that DLC is announced, I hope that your progress carries over, and I'll probably be trying to get my Wukong stance. So we'll see how that works, and I look forward to it. So that's my review. 10 out of 10 bananas. And there you have it, folks. Black Myth WuKong, a game that's awe inspiring as it is mind boggling. A mythical journey that'll leave you wanting more or just leave you wanting a banana. You've unraveled, or we've unraveled here on the panel, the secrets that tackle the boss battles and even dive deep into the lore behind this chaotic world. I want to say a big thank you to these esteemed panelists, Mr. Wilson, the legendary gem, and as well as the maker of the chaos. Thank you for making this review as epic as the game itself. And in the end, dear listeners, the only question that remains is, will you take the leap into the legend of the Black Myth WuKong? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and leave your comments. Is Black Myth WuKong better than any Souls game you've played? You leave it, let me know. We'll catch up with you on the next episode of The Critics on Cloud&Console. So until next time, keep gaming. All right, boys, and I'm heading off. And oh, before we leave, from everybody, Yao Guai.
Yo, boy.
That's why.
All right, see you guys.
See you.
Ah, fun.
Grove. Grove. Why try to believe in me? Why try do I even need to? I die with the season leaves. I glide with the season breeze. True, my mind so easily spooked. I ride just to be the me who finds hype super decently smooth. Nice type, but as sick as me.